All right. Welcome back. This is week 13 of the Feel for the Game podcast, and we are going to do a new segment to start off this podcast for this week. We're going to do our raw reaction to the release of the college football playoff rankings. They are coming out right now as we are speaking. We have it pulled up on our TV in the recording room that we're in, and we're just going to play it. We're going to turn the volume off so you don't have to hear the overlay between us trying to talk and the playoff release being announced. So we're just going to watch it and kind of talk about what we're seeing. And we're going to compare it to our top 25s that we have currently built ourselves. And then we will typically release during the week on our Instagram and on our YouTube. So we'll talk about like maybe the differences between the teams that we have higher up or lower down, and then vice versa for the playoff committee. And maybe even talk a little bit about the AP poll, which is not too far off from the college football playoff polls we've been seeing.
Yeah, I mean they've been what the AP's been doing is pretty much just copying the college football playoff poll because I mean everybody knows those people know nothing about what they're doing. I mean they basically just copy each other and just whatever they can find. So not shocking there.
Yeah, I genuinely think there's a really solid chance that the AP poll voters watch these rankings come out after the whole season voting and doing their polls, and then they immediately pivot and start to adapt to what the college football playoff top 25 is. Because you can imagine what would happen if the AP poll was drastically different on some of the top, maybe 14 teams, or maybe the group of five teams, and then the playoff selection committee rolls around and the final rankings are released. And let's say James Madison's ranked like 27th in the AP ballot, but the college football playoff has him at like 19. Something crazy like that were to happen. And then you've got a completely different team getting in as the last seed in the playoff. Well, that's going to raise a lot of controversy. Why even have the AP poll? Or what are they seeing that's so much different between the AP poll and the college football playoff poll? Which I think is there's already stuff that's been shown from the playoff committee that they think is more important this year. Strength of schedule, strength of record, and head to head is not as important. So watching those key metrics as they release this poll each week has been something that's been interesting for me. Just trying to get a good idea of what the committee values and what they maybe don't value as much this year.
One poll that don't care is the coaches poll.
Yeah, the coaches poll
If you
is
look at the back
hilarious.
end of the coaches poll, you can find some crazy stuff week to week.
Yeah, it changes a lot, and I've always kind of liked the coaches poll, but typically when I think that they're favoring my favorite teams, I'll like them a lot more. And then if they start to kind of get down on some of those teams, I don't really look at it as much. So there's a little bit of bias factored in there. But I think the coaches poll is usually pretty sound. It's not the best. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense to me, but it's not too far off from the AP poll either in the top half. It usually stays pretty consistent. I just don't know why we have to have all these different rankings. Like, I really wish that they could have a consistent release of the rankings every single week. I don't see why from week one we can't start with this. Like, I know that it has nothing to do with the playoffs, and it'd be kind of just it would get repetitive maybe. So I'm sure for viewership that's part of it. They don't want to be repetitive, but I think we should have the same committee maybe reveal a top 25 from the start of the season so it stays continual. We know what they're valuing as the season progresses, so they can't flip flop. I think they're kind of protecting themselves by waiting until like week 9 to release their first rankings.
Just give some time to watch everything and make sure that they have a good feel on it.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, I understand. Like, if you looked at our top 25s from just like 2 weeks ago and then completely forgot the previous 8 weeks of us doing these, it'd make us look a lot better for sure. Not that that really matters, but at the end of the day, I think if you saw the playoff committee release their rankings from the get go instead of the AP poll, there would be a lot more talk about maybe what they could be doing better. So I think there's probably a really good reason why they're doing it the way they do. But as a fan, I'd like more transparency. I'd like to see them have a consistent ranking throughout the whole season. I think that would be good for the sport.
I think we need a really good computer model to come take over for the AP poll.
I wouldn't hate
Just
that.
a really good one that like factors in everything you can imagine.
It's just at the end of the day, there's got to be a human element. If there's not a human element in control, then people get really frustrated with things like that.
Well, once it
So
comes to the playoff committee, it would be human. But like as far as like before that, like
I don't hate that. I guess you could take all the metrics that the playoff committee values and kind of rank them in priority. and you could turn it into instead of using the FPI, which is complete
Oh
garbage for
man.
ranking teams, it's garbage. They could use something else instead with the metrics that they actually care about. So I think that would be really interesting. But I mean, with how the seeding is this year, like they're talking about that right now before they release these rankings, it took me a minute to kind of catch on to how this plays out. I think it initially when we did the first week for this, I wasn't really sure how like the bottom seeds figured in, like in the conference championship ordering. I didn't realize that they ranked the top five conference champions as automatic bids, and then they determined their seeding based off of like what they're actually ranked. I didn't realize that, and so that changes a lot. I mean, with the ACC and how they were playing in the Big 12, we just didn't know who was going to shake out. So we didn't know how that would end. That definitely would change a lot if chaos had continued to ensue. So they just released their bottom five, 21 through 25.
All these teams were unranked last week.
So I already have a problem with this.
Oh,
They're releasing these
they're going
fast.
freaking fast.
So we're gonna have to do a speed reaction to this. I say you just let it go ahead and go through, and we can react to it after we've seen everything.
I
Because
mean, we got Arizona State at 25, and then Tulane at 24, Houston's at 23, Missouri at 22, and then Illinois at 21.
yeah, I don't like Illinois getting that high up in this poll. I
That's
think that's
weird. And
ridiculous.
Tulane being back, I don't know about that either.
So they dropped James Madison out of the poll.
James Madison's never in.
I'm thinking the AP poll. Okay, so that's interesting. That says a lot.
I'm surprised North Texas didn't make it.
North Texas not been. I think they're saying that Tulane would be favored against them in the conference championship, and they
I mean,
think
that puts Tulane as the G5 rep right now.
Yeah, I think North Texas would beat Tulane.
Me too.
I would take North Texas, but Tulane's been playing better. I just that their two losses are not good losses. Like they got blown out by Ole Miss and UTSA.
What has Illinois done to jump to 21?
I genuinely couldn't tell you.
They haven't been doing. And why not Arizona instead of Arizona State at 25?
Yeah, so Arizona has ranked wins, and their starting quarterback is not injured. So I have a hard time seeing why they have Arizona State ranked over
Well,
Arizona.
the Texas Tech win does just keep getting better, but
That does, but I mean that's when they had Sam Levitt. They're a different football team now, and I just don't really see that changing. Jeff Sims has been playing better though, so
yeah, they've figured out how to utilize him.
which I never thought I'd be able to say that. But
No.
after 6 years of been playing college football, he's starting to play decent. Okay, so the next section, 16 through 20, they've got Georgia Tech at 16. They dropped Texas down 7 spots to 17. Personally, I think Texas could be lower. I have Texas at 19. I feel like you can move them down. I don't like a three-loss team being ahead of um, several two-loss teams in Michigan and Virginia, but if you look at similar games, Texas whooped Oklahoma and Michigan lost to Oklahoma. So, I mean, you could argue that Michigan probably should be ranked below Texas. And Virginia really hasn't played that many good teams. So they're really valuing strength of record here.
How much did Tennessee move up being at 20?
3 spots.
3 spots.
I have Tennessee at 23.
I have them at 20, actually, yeah.
Not too much variance there.
I had Texas at 18, Virginia at 19. I actually have Michigan at 17.
I have Houston up there too. I put Houston at 21 and SMU at 20.
I got Houston at 23, SMU 22.
I think you got to give SMU some cred over Tennessee because they actually have ranked wins. Tennessee's biggest win is still Mississippi State.
Is that actually their best win right now?
I think so. Because they beat Kentucky since then, and I think they had one other SEC win that was
Kentucky on the road is probably their best win now.
That's probably fair. Kentucky's been playing better football. But I just have a hard time seeing SMU with a win against Miami not being up here. And, I mean, they're one overtime loss away from beating Baylor in the non-conference, which would have helped. All right,
USC slotted in at 15.
That's not too far off from me. I've got them at 15.
I've got them at 14.
I agree with that. I think that's a great spot for USC. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Where's Miami going to be at?
Probably right above them.
I bet they're 14.
They're going to keep moving. I think they're trying to sneak Miami up there.
Oh.
Yeah, there's Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt's
team.
Miami's going to be top 13.
Yeah, I've got Vanderbilt at 12. I think I'd take Vanderbilt against several of these teams. So that's really interesting. They didn't move them at all, but Vanderbilt had a bye week. So
okay, number 13 is Miami. Yeah.
So Miami moves up from 15 to 13. I have Miami at 16. behind USC, Utah, Georgia Tech, and
I've
Vanderbilt.
got them at 15. They're just trying to creep them up to Notre Dame so that plays itself out.
Yeah, I think they want to see them play again, which, to be completely honest, I think wouldn't be the most unfair thing because what really would bother me is if Miami gets left out and Notre Dame gets in. Miami probably could beat Notre Dame if they play a neutral side again.
I would pick Notre Dame every single time now.
If Notre Dame had them in
Late
South
season
Bend, I think they
Miami
could beat
though,
them.
late season Miami sucks.
Yeah, they're not clutch. We've learned this. And like we were talking about in our previous podcasts, like Mario Cristobal coach teams, like I just don't trust them. I have a hard time picking Miami in any
Never
meaningful
trust
games.
Mario.
Utah coming in at number 12, they go up one spot.
I got them at 12 as well.
I have them at 14, so I'm pretty close. BYU at 11, I match up with that. I got
I got
BYU
them there
at
too.
11.
Alabama's gonna be number 10.
Yeah, I feel good about that. I've got Notre Dame just slightly above Bama right now.
What if they have Notre Dame at 10 to set up Miami passing them?
See, I don't hate that because you look at Alabama's strength of record, it's pretty
Nope.
good.
Bama's
But
10. Yeah.
Bama dropped 6 spots for a 2 point loss at home against Oklahoma. So I want to know where they're going to put OU. That actually that matters a lot.
It's gonna be 8.
That's where I've got them. I think that makes the most sense because you look at the wins they have against the wins that Notre Dame has. Notre Dame has taken care of business week in and week out since those first two losses of the season, but OU's had some big statement wins. Beating Alabama and Texas, I mean, neither of those being home games, those are huge wins. So you got to give Oklahoma credit there. So yeah, here comes Notre Dame at 9, which is where we both have them. Right now, we are 3 for 3 matching up with the college football playoff top 12.
What did you say? Oklahoma beating Texas?
Sorry, I did say that. That's ridiculous.
Who's their other? They beat somebody else. They beat Michigan at home.
Yeah. I don't know why I got those switched up.
Yeah.
Texas shellacked Oklahoma.
That game was just an anomaly from this year.
Yeah, that was not a great game. I think injury geometry really factored into that one.
You think there's a chance that Oklahoma's above Oregon right now?
They shouldn't be, but there's a real chance that they could move them up. Okay, so yeah, here they
Yeah.
come at 8.
Yeah,
They move up
number
3
8.
spots. I didn't realize they had them at 11 previously. That really isn't too big of a jump for them. They value that Alabama win a lot. You look at Alabama's wins. I mean, they have 4 wins against teams currently in the college football playoff top 25, with Georgia, who's ranked several spots ahead of them. So it's a really big win for Alabama to hang their hat on. And they would have to lose in the Iron Bowl to miss the playoff at this point. I think a loss in the SEC championship, they still make it in if they were to go to the SEC championship.
Auburn's going to win the Iron Bowl.
We're going to have to talk about that more as we move on. I think that game's sketchy.
Oregon 7.
Yep, I got them at 7 too.
Yep.
I feel good about that.
They're just copying our poll.
I think I'm going to differ on this one here in a second, but I can explain why this would be the way that it is. I almost agree with them, but
My 3 through 6 is a little different than, or actually no, 4 through 6 is a little different than what I've seen out of some people's polls. So
yeah, they're probably going to have Ole Miss coming in at 6 here, if I had to guess. Yeah, there's Ole Miss. They move us up one spot. That's not bad. I have Ole Miss at 5 over Texas Tech right now. And that's solely because we've got wins on the road at OU and we've got LSU at home. That's a good win. We crushed Tulane in the non-conference.
that's a ranked win now.
Yeah, I just don't know how I feel about Texas Tech and the schedule that they played. They're valuing the fact that they're probably going to win their conference championship game because they're going to be favored against BYU in a rematch, probably by at least 10 to 13 points. So, assuming they finish 12-1 with the conference championship under their belt, they'll probably be in the top 4 of the 5. Which I think is what they're trying to sneak them in there to do. Because let's say Alabama finishes 10-3, is that losing SEC championship team, then I think they probably would bump Texas Tech significantly over Bama. Which I guess they're still hanging out way down there. They wouldn't be able to move up. Georgia comes in at 4. So that is interesting. They didn't swap Texas Tech and Georgia.
So we're gonna have A&M, Indiana, at Ohio State. I'm sure no change up there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that really want A&M to move up.
Well,
I'm not even taking this performance as a reason to not move them up. I just think that you look at Indiana's body of work and they've done everything and more that A&M is. A&M's schedule is not near as good as they're making it out to be. I think Indiana's played outside of the non-con, a pretty comparable schedule. to Texas A&M.
So
Ohio
this,
State clearly being number one makes the most sense.
yeah, Indiana still at 2.
I think there's a huge drop off once you get past the top four right now for me. Georgia's been playing so well. I have a really hard time seeing them losing many more football games against anybody within probably a couple spots of them. Like if they were to play in the playoff right now as the 4 seed in this setup, they're probably playing Texas Tech in the quarterfinals. I think they beat Texas Tech. I think it's a great matchup. I think they beat them.
I
And
think they
they
do
would
too.
move on to the semifinals, and they're probably playing Ohio State. I think they can beat Ohio State. I think they're one of the few teams, maybe 2 or 3 teams that have a shot to beat Ohio State.
I don't know about Ohio State because they haven't really been tested since week 1, and then I mean we've seen Texas is not great. Like
Yeah. I mean, and both those teams have changed so much since week one. Week one is it's really hard to profile teams from matchups in week one. I really do feel like Georgia has come a long way offensively, and defense is shaping up. I mean,
yeah, they're getting hot at the right time for
they
sure.
really
Unlike
are.
last year,
They are schematically picking apart teams week by week. Like if you look at their performances against Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Texas as of late, since the Alabama game, they've been on one. They're playing great offensive football, and their defense is stepping up. 10 points against Texas is pretty good, considering how Texas has played offensively. They've been playing better. They were trending up, and Georgia just completely shuts them down. So I've been thoroughly impressed with Georgia. They've got probably the two best wins right now in the SEC outside of maybe Oklahoma and Bama's wins. They've got the win against Ole Miss, and they got the win against Oklahoma. That's two top 10 wins. So I said Oklahoma. They haven't played Oklahoma. They got the win against Ole Miss, and then they've got the win against Texas. Um, I think both of those are really solid wins considering how they won those games. And those comeback wins early in the season, people haven't been talking about those much anymore. I think because the character of this team has tightened up a lot. I think Georgia's changed the composure of their team throughout the season, which is characteristic of Kirby Smart coach football teams. They're good. So I have some faith in them down the stretch.
so the matchups we'd be getting if this field was to happen would be Tulane traveling to Texas Tech to for the winner of that game to take on Georgia, and then Notre Dame going to Norman, play Oklahoma. The winner plays Ohio State, and then Miami going to Ole Miss, and the winner of that plays A&M, and then Alabama going to Oregon, and the winner of that plays Indiana.
Okay, so are they saying that Miami?
That's what I was about to say. See, they're giving Miami the ACC bid in this because they're the highest ranked team, but they're probably out. I mean, they have like no chance to make the ACC championship.
Ranked conference champions. I thought that
It is, and they're probably not going to make the conference championship, so they're probably going to be at large.
so they're saying
If
that
they
an
make
ACC champion would miss in this scenario
no, they're taking the highest ranked ACC team
instead.
instead of taking the team that's probably going to be in the championship, which is Georgia Tech, who's at
That's
16.
what's confusing to me, and I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the playoff bracket and the way that they put these teams in at the bottom. And that's what we were talking about a minute ago before they released it, is that I was still kind of confused on that.
That would clip Miami out though, if you were to go by that.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand is that technically Miami's an at-large team with where they're ranked. They're outside of the top 12 and they're not a conference champion. And Virginia and Georgia Tech most likely will be playing in the conference championship. If one of them were to lose a conference game to either Virginia Tech or Pittsburgh, I think the next teams up are SMU and like maybe Pitt or I don't know. It's not Miami.
No, because they already have 2 losses, and there's still like multiple teams with one. I think it's like it might still be 5 teams with 1 loss or something crazy like that. I can check on that for
I
us.
think it's got trimmed down since Louisville lost and
It's
Duke
4
lost.
teams with 1 loss.
So that would be Pitt, SMU, Virginia, and Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So
And Georgia Tech and Virginia only have one more conference game, and Pitt and SMU have 2.
yeah,
So the
and
chance that Miami gets back into this is like 0.
Pitt and SMU actually have harder matchups than Virginia and Georgia Tech. I'd take Virginia against Virginia Tech all day long, and I would also take Georgia Tech against
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Which
as
is
long as they take
probably
care of
gonna be a good
business,
game.
like they'll be in.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see what happens there because doesn't Pitt have Miami and Georgia Tech to finish the season?
Yeah.
I mean, if Pitt wins both those games, I'd favor them to win the
Pitt is beating Miami.
championship. I'd favor them to win the ACC championship. So if they do beat Miami,
They
The
host it.
matchup because they have Georgia Tech this week.
They're not going to win that game at Georgia Tech, I don't think. We'll talk about that later, though.
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting. I feel a little bit better about Georgia Tech pulling that one off.
And then SMU, they get Louisville at home and then go to Cal, which at Cal is kind of tricky. But
Yeah, Cal's offense has been really good. I don't trust their defense, but DeJesus is like one of my favorite players in college football right now. Sagapalute's been playing great, so you just never know what they could do. They played spoiler to Louisville already. Just never know. Yeah, then you got Miami going to Ole Miss. I would absolutely go to that game. That would be sick. Um,
but that wouldn't happen though. Is the thing with this like
well, they're not. They're saying that's the bracket. That's who would be in. That's not the rankings. Miami's not 11. They're 13.
well they're saying they would get the ACC auto bid with what they're projecting right here, but that's not.
Well, I don't think they're projecting Miami to win the ACC. I think they're projecting the ACC champion to miss and
Well, they
Miami to
are.
take their
See like
spot.
the gold on the numbers.
Yeah.
That's saying conference champion that's out.
Oh, it says must win conference. So yeah, I guess they think Miami's gonna. That's so
Well,
weird
no,
to
they're
me.
just taking it by default because they're the highest ranked. I don't know why though, because
Well, I
like
guess they can't pick a conference champion that hadn't happened yet.
they're just by default taking the highest ranked,
Yeah, okay. So when the actual selection comes out, those two spots are very open to interpretation. But right now, it's they're just filling them with the highest ranked
which means
teams.
nothing.
So yeah, those spots don't mean anything. That's what I was confused about. I guess that makes so much more sense. And then they got Alabama going to Eugene to play Oregon. I think that would be a sick game. That game profiles pretty interestingly. So
Oklahoma hosting Notre Dame would be really fun too.
I feel like that would be a really neat game solely because Notre Dame has not played a team with a defense all season.
Mm.
Like Miami's defense is solid, but they have a lot of holes. A&M has a lot of holes. Like they've proven that they can be scored on. I think that far and above OU is one of the best defenses in all of college football. So we would see exactly what Notre Dame was made of.
What do you think are the odds that Texas A&M this year is kind of like TCU a few years ago?
So you got to look at their schedule, and I remember TCU had some nail biters, like games
Against
they almost shouldn't have
mid
won.
teams.
And you look at A&M's schedule, and people have already brought this up. I've been looking at this for a couple weeks now, but with the way the season's shaped up, it looks worse for A&M and their strength of schedule because they've played basically the entire bottom half of the SEC in conference play. No ranked teams, none,
They played no ranked SEC team.
not a single one. They played Missouri, they played State, they
Well,
played
Missouri's ranked
Arkansas.
now.
Yeah, I guess the college football playoff has them ranked now, but I mean, I don't really agree with that, to be honest with you. I don't have Missouri ranked at all. I think without Bo Pribula, they don't really stand much of a chance in legitimate matchups. But they played Arkansas, Auburn, Mississippi State, Missouri.
Yeah, more than half their SEC wins are against teams at or below 500 overall.
Yeah, and they also play Texas here in a little bit, so they'll probably pick up a ranked win there. But they could lose that game in Austin too, which would be probably their biggest test of the season because it's a rivalry game at night, most likely at your rival's home stadium. Austin's not an easy place to play. Texas has only lost on the road this season, I'm pretty sure. They haven't lost a game at home. So
I don't think so.
I'd feel like that would be a really tight line, like maybe even Texas lean
I
possibly.
bet Texas is going to be favored.
I could see maybe a -1.5,
Vegas loves some
-2
Texas.
in favor of Texas. They do love Texas. So I mean, there's some interesting scenarios we could have play out. If A&M loses and think if Alabama loses the Iron Bowl, Ole Miss would need to win the Egg Bowl to make the SEC championship game, and they would play Georgia in a rematch. I would take Georgia all day long. Um, there's also a scenario where A&M loses, Alabama loses, and then Ole Miss loses. Then I think that
Gets in there.
they would end up putting in
Would it be Georgia versus A&M?
Georgia versus A&M because A&M would only have one conference loss and Alabama would have two, and the Ole Miss would have two. So Ole Miss wouldn't win the tiebreaker. Actually, I think if A&M were to lose and Ole Miss were to win, there's still a scenario where I think A&M would make it in over Ole Miss with tiebreakers. I don't know what that looks like. Actually, I say that if it has anything to do with common opponents, We have a couple, but Ole Miss has way better ranked wins in the SEC. We've played better teams in conference standings. So, like, I think they would probably look at the overall win percentage of conference teams that you played. So, like, they would average out all the teams that you played and beat in whatever their conference win percentage is. And Ole Miss clearly would be higher,
Yeah.
just given what we just talked about. So, I like the scenario most likely happening of Alabama playing A&M, but I also see Alabama and Georgia rematch being a real possibility. I don't have a ton of faith in Alabama to win the Iron Bowl now, but I just have a hard time seeing Ole Miss making it in unless chaos ensues. I feel like if chaos really does ensue, I think Ole Miss might lose the Egg Bowl.
I
Not that
mean,
those are
it could
dependent
for
on each
sure
other,
happen, but I don't know.
but just knowing Ole Miss, like with the way everything has been going lately, with the coaching conversation and just the standards being probably way too high for us and the bar being too high, we probably find a way to lose that game. But we will be there. So it'll be interesting to see either way. Like we talked about, neither of us have seen our team win an Egg Bowl. That will change next Friday. Very excited about that game. I think that pretty much does it. I don't have any huge takeaways from this poll, maybe other than who they're projecting in at that 11 and 12 seed. I think it's going to be North Texas, and I think it's probably going to be a Georgia Tech or maybe a Virginia.
I mean, I am surprised Tulane's ranked.
Yeah, I don't love that, to be honest with you. They're
It
only
has to
big
be the
games. They
two
got blown out.
wins. It's got to be the wins against Duke and Northwestern doing it.
And you got to look at that because Northwestern and Duke are barely 500 teams.
They're 5-5, both of them.
Yeah, so I don't love that. I really don't. I think there's teams like Arizona who have beaten ranked teams this season that probably deserve to be ranked. And just because they really want to rank a group of five team, they're going to do it, to set up. Because, if they have an unranked group of five team make the playoffs, that looks really bad.
That's probably all they're doing is
So I think they're
damage
just
control
free
for that.
firing Tulane as the champion and going ahead and ranking them. Because the AP poll is probably not going to be anywhere close to ranking Tulane right now. They're probably like 27 or 28.
I think Tulane's ranked in the AP poll actually.
Seriously?
They're 24. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Just like the playoff.
It's dude.
But North Texas is 22 and James Madison's 21 in the AP.
I just think that's ridiculous.
I think the AP might be better than the college football playoff poll this week.
Bottom with the group of five teams, I agree. The college football playoff top 12 is pretty solid. I agree with most of it. The only thing I don't love is them also pre-firing Texas Tech up the rankings just because they think they're going to win their conference. Conference championships matter, but at the end of the day, whoever is the better football team and has the best win should be ranked higher. End of story.
Yeah.
If Georgia and Ole Miss both get jumped by Texas Tech just because they beat BYU twice, I don't think that's fair. But if the College Football Playoff Selection Committee thinks BYU is that good of a football team, they beat them 2 times in a row, I guess they deserve to buy more. Ole Miss and Georgia. But really interesting stuff. I think we're going to continue to do this for the rest of the season as they do these projections until we get to the final selection after the SEC championship games play out. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do this year. I think we're going to get into some scenarios that were similar to last year where 3-loss teams and conference championship losers may either get left out or put in, and then it'll kind of set the bar moving forward what to expect. So, exciting stuff. Looking forward to it. All right, time for our Week 12 recap. We're going to go ahead and start with Georgia versus Texas. This was in Athens. We both had Georgia winning this game comfortably, but I don't think we saw a 25-point victory happening here. I mean, there was a scenario that Texas laid a huge egg here.
I had it 35-20, so I was pretty close.
That is pretty close.
And I did say I thought that Georgia was going to pretty comfortably win this game, and then they did.
Yeah, I think I had Georgia winning by like maybe 8 or 9 points. I think it was 8 because I thought it would probably be closer to a one-possession game. But I feel like Georgia would be able to perform in the output they were able to do offensively here. That didn't surprise me. I think what surprised me the most was Texas only scoring 10 points. I just thought that they'd do a little bit more in this game. And to be fair, it was 14-10 until Georgia scored and then kicked it onside and scored again. So, I mean, if you look at the game from that perspective, they played a competitive half of football and then just their offense just stalled out and could not do anything moving the ball after that.
Yeah, and then they couldn't run the ball at all. I mean, what they end up with like 30 yards or something. It was something just
23 total team rushing yards, which is one of the things we talked about going into this game was Texas's inability to run the football this season, which is insane because I mean they've returned some of the same backs they had the past like 2 years. Like Wisner's been great for them. Last year he had 1,000 yards. He wasn't even supposed to be one of the top three running backs on the team. He ends up going for 1,000 last year. This year he's got to be averaging sub 4.5 yards a carry. He's not really playing well, but I don't think that's a him problem. I think that has a lot more to do with the offensive scheme and the offensive line play right now.
I would
They're
agree.
not getting good offensive line play.
And they don't have enough in the downfield passing game to compete with a team like Georgia like that and score what they needed to.
They're
That's kind of what
super
I
one
expected.
dimensional wide receiver. Ryan Wingo's really their only threat to move the ball behind the line of scrimmage or downfield, which it's mainly going to be behind the line of scrimmage play.
Yeah, with Arch Manning back there, it is.
Yeah, and that ended up showing in this game I'm sorry, I almost said A&M. I was looking at the ticker. They were talking about A&M on the college football playoff rankings. Um, when you look at Texas, I mean, they just have been predominantly moving the ball from behind the line of scrimmage play. Screens, swing passes, any sort of stretch run option or RPO, that's what they were doing. Nothing was getting pushed down the field. Georgia was able to stall them out, and there was no backup plan. There was no, if we can't move the ball doing it the way we do it, can we move it by throwing it down the field? That wasn't an option. And then they just kind of rolled over. So that shows me everything I need to see about Texas right now. Their really only big win to me is the win at Oklahoma, or I guess it's neutral site. But beating Oklahoma is a great win. But I mean, we broke down that game a couple weeks back, and I really feel like if Oklahoma has a healthy offense and they don't lose the turnover battle, they win that football game. Texas obviously had the huge punt return to probably win them that football game as well and put it away. Texas has been doing stuff like that all season. There was not enough magic on punt returns in the whole world in swing passes and screens that could get them to win this football game.
No, I mean you don't go to Georgia and get any magic on the road against them.
No, Georgia owns Texas right now. They own Sark, Arch Manning. I mean, there's no amount of Manning magic that he could bring to the table to make this game legitimately close. So, regardless of the fact that they were competitive early, Gunnar Stockton played incredible, going 24 for 29, 229 passing and 4 passing touchdowns, tacking on another 29 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. So, 5 total touchdowns for him. He played incredible. He had one interception, but to be honest with you, I mean, to be able to play the kind of ball they're playing and not throw interceptions is almost impossible. So that was bound to happen. Texas has some athletes back there, so I wasn't surprised by that. But he played incredible. I think the biggest play was the 30-yard touchdown to London Humphreys, extending their lead to 2 possessions. I mean, total strike. London Humphreys kind of bangs his way into the end zone there and puts them up by 11. That set the tone. Like, okay, Texas has to respond. If they can't respond by pushing the ball down the field, this game is over right now. And like we just said, Texas just rolled over. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't get anything going behind the line of scrimmage like they want to do. And downfield passing just was not an option for them, apparently. So that's where this game ended up going. I mean, Georgia just did what they wanted to do in the second half. Kicking that onside and scoring again after going up by 11 was pretty gutsy because you didn't really need to do that. But I think Georgia just knew they're like, I don't think Texas can score anyway. Let's just go ahead and get the ball back and score again.
Go ahead and put it out of reach.
Yeah, go ahead and put the final dagger in the coffin. That's exactly what they did. I was really impressed by how they coached in this game. The staff for this Georgia team, defensively and offensively, looks like they're improving their units week by week. Like we just talked about in our top 25 playoffs, I feel like Georgia has been one of the only teams throughout the season with an early loss that has improved week by week. I feel like Ohio State has improved in certain areas as the weeks have gone on, but I feel the same way about them I have since like week 3.
I mean, they just haven't really had a chance to prove themselves in any of these games.
Yeah, I feel like Georgia has shown up on some of the biggest stages so far this season out of all teams. What they did in Starkville going in there and just absolutely tearing State apart just proved that they're taking care of business right now. They're not goofing around. They're not, eking by with these close wins, having to come back 30-3 at halftime against South Carolina. Like they're taking care of business
They're
and they're beating
focused on
teams.
their goal.
They're laser focused. They're physical, like Kirby Smart said in his post game press. Like they want to be the most physical team on every football field. Like whether they have the best athletes or not, they're going to bring the mentality that they are going to play as physical a football game as possible. And if you don't want the smoke, then get off the field. They have that mentality, and I think that with the kind of talent they've got, if they can keep that mentality in the playoffs, they can beat anybody. And I don't see that changing. Kirby Smart coach football teams always are like that to me, and this has been the least physical team I think he's ever coached. But regardless, you've still got guys like Gunnar Stockton at quarterback who are running people over when they should probably be trying to protect themselves. So that's the character of this football team. They're all in, and I like them down the stretch. All right. Moving on to Florida, going to Oxford for a much anticipated game, and not because Florida has a good record and has playoff potential, but because they want to hire Lane Kiffin. And most fans looked at this as just an opportunity to scout their future head coach. At least that's what I keep hearing from people who look on the message boards and have been reporting on social media and from fans at the game. I was at this game.
It was also Ole Miss playoff clincher game.
Technically, I
It
once
is.
again am
It
not
is.
gonna get over my skis on this because I think a 14 plus point Egg Bowl loss would eliminate Ole Miss from the
No, we'd have
playoffs.
to beat y'all 70-0 for y'all to miss the playoff.
I don't know
Trust me.
about that, man. With the kind of chaos that can happen, nothing's certain, especially with Ole Miss football. If Lane Kiffin were to leave, and this team were to lose him, I think that also impacts where they rank us. So if let's say he decides to leave between now and the Egg Bowl, or he says he's going to leave after the Egg Bowl, and then we lose. Well, not only did we just end the season on the most sour note possible, you lose to your in-state rival who just needed to win for a bowl game. You lose your coach, who's currently the most sought-after coach in college football and one of the best play callers in college football. And now you got to go to the playoffs, and you're probably a bottom seed, even if you make it. I think the committee looks at that and says, we might not want to put this team in. So that's something to think about. I'm pessimistic as an Ole Miss fan, so I'm looking for the worst options here. But this game was really close in the fourth quarter. I expected this game to be competitive. When Florida shows up, they show up. They showed up against Georgia a couple weeks back, and they had a pretty similar game to this. They were winning 20-17, and then Georgia ended up scoring late and icing the game with the ball and winning 24-20. Ole Miss took a 27-24 lead in the fourth quarter off of an interception by Wyatt Williams. They had a chance to go down and take a two possession lead, turned it over on downs on the goal line again. And then Florida proceeds to do nothing with the ball. We end up stopping them and putting on a garbage time touchdown, winning 34-24. This is about what I expected. I didn't expect Florida to be leading most of the game, but I did expect it to be very competitive. So at the end of the day, Florida got completely outgained by Ole Miss. I think it was like a 200-yard separation. Ole Miss went for over 530 total yards on 31 carries, 224, and three touchdowns from Kawan Lacey rushing. He had his best game of his career and solidified himself as one of the best players in the SEC with 19 total touchdowns this season. He's been playing great football down the stretch. So Ole Miss has found a running game which they didn't have this time last year moving into the playoffs. And they did miss the playoffs, I think, largely in part because they could not close out games running the ball. I think this was a huge part of this game. I think if Ole Miss had the same team from last year running the ball, we would have lost this game. I don't think we could have closed it out. But time of possession here, Ole Miss had 38 minutes time of possession. That means we chewed the clock and we ran the ball the whole game pretty much. And Trinidad still threw for over 300, but we did a lot of running the football that we would not have normally done with the players we had last year. So being able to kind of open up the playbook and say, all right, we want to choose some clock here. We want to hand off the ball on 3rd and 8. We have the ability to do that now. That opens up the playbook tremendously for this offense. So with that being said, Ole Miss goes 5 for 7 on 4th down. 2 of those 4th downs being inside the 5-yard line and not coming away with any points. That was tough. Ole Miss also had a hands to the face penalty get called incorrectly by the officials. It could have resulted in Ole Miss getting a 1st down and not taking the field goal that they made on that play and getting a touchdown instead. But the officials made a incorrect call. I won't get too much into it because we ended up winning the game by 10 anyway, but not a great call by the officials. Lane Kiffin was pretty upset about that. Lagway ended up playing a pretty good game to start. He had a couple deep balls in this game. It made me see that when his offensive line holds up, which we did not get any pressure on the quarterback in this game, which was surprising. he's still a pretty talented player, like we thought he was. So he can make the throws. His offensive line, his receivers around him just have to make plays. So I think that's something to keep an eye on as he maybe looks to transfer or stay if a specific said person ends up coming and coaching there next year. I just saw a notification earlier that said he followed Lane Kiffin on Instagram. So that's really
Huge
important.
news.
Huge news. I actually saw one of Ole Miss's staffers going to talk to him after the game, and then one of the Florida staffers like went and grabbed him, like pulled him away. So it's kind of like I forgot what game it was the other day. I think it was maybe it was Lenore Sellers after a game. Somebody tried to talk to him. It was super funny. But anyway, this game was really competitive. I think a lot of people expected a blowout here, but Ole Miss almost comes in clutch with a backdoor cover here, just missing the cover by I think a point to half a point.
I expected a blowout and was wrong.
Yeah, it's just chalk rarely ever flies in an SEC night game, so I didn't feel too great about Ole Miss dominating in this one. Had a lot of chances to, a lot of statistical categories that made sense for them too, but at the end of the day, Florida came to play. So really interesting game. I had a great time. Really, really cool to see Ole Miss finish another season 7-0 at home. If Lane Kiffin ends up leaving, he's left behind a really solid legacy of really, really great home win stretches. I think we're like 35-3 at home since like 2023 or something, or 2021. I can't remember what the timestamp was, but that's insane. As an Ole Miss fan, I can't even believe I'm saying that. But there's a lot of drama with him right now. Who knows what's going to happen? I just continue to stick by the same statement that I feel like really only Lane Kiffin knows what he's going to do. And at the end of the day, whatever he decides to do, Ole Miss is a better program because of what he did there. And if he leaves tomorrow, Ole Miss can get a guy like John Sumrall in there, and I think they can still have a good football program. If he stays, he could build a dynasty there. That's probably really optimistic, but I just genuinely don't think he can't do what he can do at Ole Miss, and for some reason think he needs to do better at Florida. You know, but needless to say, I'm not Lane Kiffin. I'm not in his inner circle, so I don't know what he's going to do. We'll find out. I don't think there's supposed to be an ultimatum before the Egg Bowl, like everybody was saying, but there's always a chance something comes out before then. So we'll be watching for that. Alabama versus Oklahoma. Final here in Tuscaloosa, 23-21. Oklahoma gets a sneaky win here. We both had Alabama winning this one in a relatively close game. I think I had Alabama by field goal. Fortunately for Alabama, it was missed field goals that probably cost them this game.
I think I had Bama by like 10.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
I saw some scenarios where Alabama probably did win this game by more than a touchdown. And if you look at the box score and you cover up with your hand that little spot at the bottom where it says turnovers,
you would
Alabama
pick
wins
Bama to
this game.
win 10 times out of 10.
Yeah,
And it's kind of the same thing with Oklahoma beating Tennessee, too.
that says a lot about Oklahoma and their defense. It does not say a lot about their offense. And as they approach a playoff bid, most likely, I'll factor that in heavily in whatever matchup they find themselves in. I think a matchup against a team like Oklahoma, no, against a team like Notre Dame, whether it's at Oklahoma or in South Bend, that doesn't change that much for me. This Oklahoma team is decent at home and on the road because they don't play much differently. Their defense, I mean, at
Defense
home,
travels.
yeah, their defense at home is really good. Their defense away is really good. Their offense is super, super spotty and largely inconsistent. Can't run the ball. I mean, John Mateer, even if he's healthy, needs a lot more wide receiver to be legitimately as threatening as he can be in the passing and rushing game. I'm just shocked that Alabama found a way to lose this football game. I had it being really close, yes, but I was confident Alabama would win. And looking at the box score, not that stats are everything, I watched this game. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Like Alabama outgaining them, Alabama on third down, Alabama with penalties, Alabama with time of possession, Alabama running the ball. All of those things, Alabama was in the positive against Oklahoma in. And then you get all the way to the bottom and you see -3 in turnover margin. And that's the story of the game. Oklahoma gets a pick six. They had a couple of other fumble recoveries that end up getting overturned where they were half a second too late on a hit where they probably end up getting more fumbles in this game. So I think that there's a lot more left on the table in the turnover margin for Oklahoma. I also think there was a lot more points left on the table for Alabama. So both these teams are really solid, and this doesn't really take away much for me from Alabama. I still think they're capable of winning huge games. I'm not confident in them to run the table and win the national championship like I did in the preseason, but they're still in it. There's still a team that has the characteristics to be able to win almost any matchup on any given day. So as long as Ty Simpson's healthy and he's their quarterback, they can win just about any football game in my eyes. Eli Bowen gets the play of the game here with a 87-yard pick six of Ty Simpson to start off this game. This was a huge play. Turning of the tides, it kind of felt like, no pun intended, that Alabama really was going to have to win this game convincingly throwing the ball. And they continue to try to push the ball down the field even after the pick six. Ty Simpson throws for over 300. They just couldn't score in the red zone when it mattered. Field goals being missed, that was huge. High snap, that's tough. You're going to have high snaps. It's college football. Stuff happens. It's like you go back to the Tyler Buckner fumble snap on the extra point. Like, you can't be perfect on every single play. You can't get mad at your long snapper for missing one snap if he makes 1,000 perfect snaps in the season. That's college football. There's a lot of other things that you can do to win a football game. So don't blame it on the one tiny mistake one guy makes once a season. So I think there's a lot more to it. I think Alabama has a lot to work on. I liked what I saw from them in the run game. They're moving around the running back position a little bit right now. Jam Miller hasn't been healthy all season. I like what they're getting out of some new guys. I think they can slightly run the ball more effectively now. So we'll see how that plays out against maybe some weaker rushing defenses. Auburn not being one of them. So really looking forward to seeing how that plays out in the Iron Bowl.
I think the Iron Bowl is going to be a classic this year.
I think you might be right.
It's going to be insane.
I think the Egg Bowl and the Iron Bowl are shaping up to be a lot better football games than people are giving them credit for. I think it's a huge trap game for Alabama given how much of a rise Auburn is on offensively. If they can play the kind of defense they played in the first half of the season paired with the offense that they now are playing, Auburn absolutely could win this football game. But Alabama's defense has been playing really well too. So regardless of the fact that they lost this game, I thought Alabama's defense actually was one of the best units on the field. They played really well. Oklahoma's defense is just a notch better, but Alabama's defense is right behind them, playing some really elite football. OU's offense did virtually nothing in this game. Outside of the one John Mateer touchdown run from probably 20 yards out, I really didn't feel like they did too much to impress me in this game.
And the difference was just Oklahoma's defense being able to create more chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Brett Venables, being the defensive-minded coach that he is, he's had his eye on this game all season, going into last season after how that badly they beat Alabama last year in Norman. Going into Bryant Denny and being able to beat them again with defense, that's got to feel pretty good. At the end of the day, if I'm Kalen DeBoer, playing Oklahoma in the future, if Brett Venables is still the coach, you've got to be able to game plan better against this defense. You know what you're going to get. They want to wreak havoc in the backfield. They want to force errant throws. You have to be able to run the football. You have to. Ole Miss, if we hadn't been able to run the football against Oklahoma, we would have gotten behind the chain for sure. And to be fair, Kalon Lacey had like over 20 carries for less than 80 yards. But he had just enough good runs in this game to give us a chance. So overall, this was a great game, really competitive. You take away one play, maybe going either way, things change a lot. So these teams pretty even in my eyes. I like Alabama with the offense. I'd probably take them on a neutral side if they played again. But OU is a great football team, and they vaulted themselves back into the playoff conversation. USF at Navy, final score 41-38. Navy midshipmen get a signature win against the ranked USF Bulls. This was a disappointing one for me because selfishly, I really wanted to see USF and Byron Brown in the playoffs. I don't want to see Navy in the playoffs. Nothing against our service academies, but I just don't want to watch either Georgia or Ole Miss play the service academy at home in the first round of the playoffs. Like, go ahead, kill me now. I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, that'd be terrible. But they have the capability to win like any game though. Just the way they play. Like,
They can.
In a playoff game they would not win, but like beating USF, like it's just really random with the service academies.
Yeah, I mean,
especially when they got a quarterback like Blake Horvath.
He's a really solid player, and Eli Heidenreich has been great too. He had 185 total yards in that win against USF. He's a wide receiver / halfback that they play kind of all over the field. Smaller guy, but he's super shifty. He's got great hands, top end speed, solid. He's a really good player. He may actually have an NFL future if he keeps up the kind of production he's got. Which I don't remember the last time Navy put a wide receiver in the NFL that was white, but this dude's a beast. So we may see that happen. Overall, though, I don't have I don't have a good feeling about Navy if they were to win this conference championship game for the AAC and make the playoffs. I mean, you saw the result against Notre Dame; they got blown out.
They did play that game without Horvath though.
Yeah,
That impacts it a little bit.
it does impact it for me, but I didn't feel like Horvath was the impact player of this football game. I mean, they put in Braxton Woodson, and he had a huge 20-yard touchdown run that put them up 10 in the third quarter. So, regardless of the fact that he's been playing and he's healthy, they're putting in Braxton Woodson and giving him playing time. It's the way he can do with the football. Regardless, they're going to play the same way. So, I think Blake Horvath is a great quarterback. I think he's absolutely one of the most unsung players in the sport right now. Last year, he had an insane season. Navy is probably going to have him go down as one of the best players he's ever played there. I just don't think he's a huge game changer, to be honest with you. So we'll see what Navy's able to do on the stretch. Got to talk about the winner first, but USF just, I mean, they killed me in this one. Like, I wanted them to win this game so bad. Byron Brown played stupid in this game. Like, he had over 400 total yards and multiple touchdowns. It just didn't matter at the end of the day. It didn't get it done for this Bulls team. I thought that the rushing defense would be better. They allowed a total of 338 on the ground against Navy, which is to be expected against Navy sometimes. But I expected more out of USF's defense. I just remember the games like against Boise State in the season opener. They put on a tackling clinic, forcing fumbles and boxing up a really solid rushing offense in Boise State, who made the playoffs last year. I know they don't have Ashton Genty this year, but they're still a decent football team, and that their identity is running the football. And they got boxed.
And holding Florida to 16 at Florida.
Yeah, I mean, they dominated Florida in Gainesville. Like, I just thought that this defense had more in the tank. I don't know if they've had some injuries I'm unaware of, or triple option is just a huge weakness in their scheme, but they did not play well. They just kept giving up big play after big play after big play, and Navy was able to throw in some huge pop plays in the passing game. I mean, that really ended up turning the tides on this one at different points where you thought that Navy wasn't going to be able to throw the ball to win, and Eli Heidenreich's wide open for 80 yards, you know? And at the end of the day, you just got to be able to stop the run when you play service academies, and they didn't do it. So USF falls to, I think they're 8-3 right now, or 7-3. They might have two games
I
left.
think they're 7-3.
So they got two more games left on their schedule. I really wish we got to see them maybe do a bit more with this season. I think this is probably Alex Golish's last season as their football coach. There's just too many head coaching vacancies. I see him most likely leaving.
What about Memphis losing too, and they're out of the AAC race now as well?
That didn't really surprise me that much, to be honest with you. Memphis is a good football team, but they've had too many close games this year for me to think that they were going to be able to hold on anymore. An upset was bound to happen. So East Carolina's a good football team.
They only have one conference loss. They're not out of it.
Yeah, I
Which is
think they're
crazy.
right there. And Caden Hauser's a great quarterback. So
Do you see some of the stuff Mike Wright did in that game?
no, I didn't even see that.
He had like a 50-plus yard punt and the game sealing interception,
Dude,
which is just insanity. He
It's
plays
so
like he can play like every position besides like the line of scrimmage.
I had no idea that he was doing that. We actually have
It's
already dropped him
hilarious.
on this podcast because he played for Mississippi State for a little while, played for Vanderbilt. I mean, he's played at several teams that he played at Northwestern for a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been all over the map. And there's a Mike Wright Jewelers like down the street from my office, so we were talking about that, and it reminded us of Mike Wright. This guy is still playing meaningful snaps at all different positions in college football several years down the road. It's just crazy to think that that's what he's doing now. If you had told me that a couple of years ago that he'd be getting interceptions and kicking punts for East Carolina, I'd be like, what on earth are you talking about?
Absolute legend.
But that's super cool. Shout out to Mike Wright. Give him some love. But that game was tough for me. I ended up picking USF in that game. Who did you have, Landon?
USF dominant.
I felt the same way.
Never trusting Golish again. Overrated coach.
I think he's a good coach. I think there's only so much you can do at a program like USF, but when you've got the kind of guys they got on offense, especially Byron Brown, you just can't win football games like that. I mean, Byron Brown is probably one of the greatest group of five quarterbacks that I've ever seen, like talent wise. Maybe not statistically or just overall season output, but physically, I don't know that I've seen a more talented player in the group of five in a long time. Okay, I'm sorry. I gotta give some attention to how bad that was. We're watching Tuesday night action. We've currently got Western Michigan playing NIU. I just watched NIU's punter do like a dribble between his legs with a drop snap on a punt and then proceed to lose the ball behind him, miss falling on it, and then kicking it down inside the 10-yard line and then falling on it again.
Peak action.
Gotta love some Tuesday night action, and it looks like Western Michigan's about to go up 35-13.
After being down 13 to nothing.
To NIU. Yeah, crazy stuff. Love action. Just had I was watching that unfold on the TV next to us as we were recording. It just I had to mention that. So if anybody's watching this and wants to see a crazy play, look that up. Timestamp was like I think like maybe 8 minutes left in the football game. So that's a really bad one. If there was a low lights top 10 on Sports Center, that would be number one. All right, moving on. We've got Cincinnati taking on Arizona at home. Final score here 30-24 in favor of Arizona. Big upset in the Big 12. Cincinnati was still in the Big 12 race, which puts them still in the playoff race. If they were to win this game, they dropped this one. Arizona and Nova Fida put on an offensive clinic, and honestly, I think they controlled this game for most of the time until Cincinnati tried to mount a comeback late there at the end.
Pretty much. And this result really doesn't surprise me. I almost wanted to pick this last week because Scott Satterfield, the coach for Cincinnati, seems like he always has these type of games every season, especially last year. Last year they were 5-2 and lost 5 in a row to go 5-7. So I kind of had a feeling a game like this was coming for Cincinnati, and it came this past week.
Yeah, my biggest things that I was watching this game were the lines of scrimmage. I felt like Cincinnati had a huge advantage here. They got to the quarterback a little bit with 3 sacks, 9 TFLs as a team. Arizona did not get much pressure on the quarterback. They had 1 sack, but 2 turnovers from Brendan Sorsby in this game, putting Cincinnati -2 in the turnover margin. With it being a one possession game, that's a killer. They got outgained by 150 yards. So whenever you're in the negative margins and turnovers and you get outgained, it doesn't look too good for you. I don't really need to watch too much of the football game probably to know that you lost. That's a pretty big gap right there. 2 possessions and 150 yards. That's a lot. Kedrick Riscano played a pretty solid game. He's starting to come on for them. Ex Ole Miss running back, transferred to Arizona, I think last year. So he's been kind of a rotational player, but he had a 50-yard touchdown in this game that ended up kind of putting the icing on the cake for Arizona here. I mean, Brennan Sorsby had probably one of his worst first halves of the entire season. Maybe going back to the Nebraska game that opened the season. He had 2 interceptions. The run game for Arizona, being able to run the ball, I think that's probably what won it for him in the end, though, because if they hadn't been able to close out the game running the ball, Cincinnati could have stormed back and still won this game. Brendan Sorsby started to get hot there at the end and put together some decent drives, but when it came down to it, Arizona said, all right, well, we've been throwing the ball really well. Fafita had a great game, throwing for almost 300, but let's start handing the ball off. And they pop a huge touchdown run, ice this game, get a big upset win. They moved to 7-3. Definitely hitting the over on the win total for the Wildcats.
Yeah, they've been a surprise, and they're very close to being like 8-2 right now, or 9-1. They barely lost a game to BYU where they choked a 10-point lead with like 5 minutes left. But yeah,
They lost a
surprise
double
team.
overtime there, and then they also had a really tight game against Houston too.
Yeah, they lost to Houston on a game-winning field goal.
So this team is 2 plays probably away from being right there in the consideration for the Big 12 title, which is insane. I don't think this team's near dominant enough to be making a run for a Big 12 title, but they played good football. So all credit where credit's due to Arizona, playing a good season so far. They've got games coming up against their rival, Arizona State. And I think they've got one more matchup other than that.
I think they play Baylor this week.
That'll be a fun game. I think that Baylor's favored in that game, possibly. No. I think Arizona's favored by 6.5. So Baylor's not a terrible play there. Should be a shootout, if I had to guess. It's typically how most Baylor games have been lately. Arizona scoring a lot of points. But this game was interesting. I thought it would be a huge quarterback battle game. Turned out to be that Noah Fafita clearly won that battle today. All right, our next game, Pittsburgh taking on Notre Dame at home in a game, according to Pat Narduzzi, that is irrelevant. That showed on the field. Final score was 37-15 in favor of Notre Dame. I did not really tune into this game very much, to be honest with you. I figured it would kind of turn out like this. After what Pat Narduzzi was saying, it just it didn't sit well with me. I didn't like the feeling of, oh, this game doesn't matter. We're playing a top ranked team, but we don't really give a crap. So if they score 100 on us and we lose, it doesn't matter because it's not a conference game. That's such a ridiculous attitude to have about a football game where you're lining up, you're putting the ball down the hash marks, and your team's out there playing. You're playing for pride. I mean, you're playing to prove what you've been proving all season, and that's who you think you are and what you've been working so hard for. Why on earth would you go out and line it up against another team and say, nah, this game doesn't really matter that much? That bleeds into the locker room. You can't say something like that to the media and then go back to the locker room and say, all right, guys, put your pads on. Let's go play football. Even if you didn't mean it and you're like, guys, I was just saying that for publicity, just to put an emphasis on the fact that conference games should matter more. And the players are all like, oh, yeah, you're right. Well, this game still matters. Let's go play the same way. Well, you just went out in front of the entire country and said that this game doesn't matter to us. So how are we supposed to compute that in our heads and go out and play this game like it matters, like the world's like revolving around this game? In college football, on Saturdays, if you're an athlete that, and you know you're going to be playing, all you're thinking about, you're locking in, all you're thinking about is the game you're playing that day. And if your coach tells you this game doesn't matter, that doesn't sit well with me. I have a hard time thinking of being an athlete and my coach telling me, yeah, don't worry about this one, even though we're playing one of the best teams in the country, doesn't matter. That's ridiculous. I'm always going to want to go out and compete to the best of my ability. I know those players felt the same way, but it's got to be confusing for them. So they show up and they do not show out in this game. Jeremiah Love goes for 167 and a touchdown. Huge pick six early in this game by Tay Johnson off of Mason Heinzel. He did not play his greatest game of the season. I don't think he had a pretty solid passing output at all. Throwing an interception and I think maybe one touchdown in this game. They didn't run the ball very well. They were 0 for 13 on third down. It's just a recipe for a loss against a team like Notre Dame every single time. Jeremiah Love had an insane touchdown run in this game. Put a guy in a blender with a spin cycle move. Absolutely elite. I think that vaulted him into legitimate Heisman conversation. Just the fact that's a Heisman play. Put that on a highlight reel. His stats don't really pop off the paper. I was comparing him to Kawan Lacey the other day. He's got better yards per carry and he's got more receiving yards, but he's got less touchdowns. And Kawan Lacey's nowhere to be found on any Heisman odds ever. So I think that's kind of odd considering Notre Dame's got two losses and Ole Miss has one. There's that much variance in those two players, but the kind of plays that Jeremiah Love is making are really impressive. So you got to give him credit where credit's due. I think that the over 13 on third downs was what stood out to me the most in this game. I mean, Pitt being the passing offense that they are, you can't go over 13 on third down. That means that you're passing the ball most likely on first, second, and third down if you're going over 13.
Yeah.
That's the kind of recipe. Or you're getting stuffed on first down and then you get into obvious passing situations and Notre Dame just tees off on you, which is in essence what happened in this football game. Notre Dame actually lost the turnover battle in this one and still handily won this. They actually had a really weird sequence of events where I think Pitt got a pick six on Notre Dame and then ended up having a 2 point conversion, I think, get housed on them. So really crazy stuff. Really weird turn of events. But at the end of the day, I think this Notre Dame football team has improved throughout the season, but their quality of opponents has not really been that great. So it's going to probably end up taking a home playoff game for them to prove what their worth is against a really solid team, like maybe in Oklahoma, or if they end up getting a rematch against Miami, which apparently the committee really wants Miami to make the playoff. We saw that today, so would love to see that. If Notre Dame ends up making the playoff, I would love for them to get a rematch with Miami. I think that would be best possible scenario for the playoff committee and honestly for the playoffs in general, because we wouldn't have to watch Georgia Tech or Virginia line up against anybody.
So sure.
Would love to see that. But Notre Dame takes care of business here. Not really much to be said. I don't really have anything else for this one unless you had anything behind him.
I was gonna say that Pat Narduzzi is just an absolute weirdo. I'm gonna be honest.
He's a goober.
They had him on game day. He's just a weirdo. he's just I'm not even surprised that he said what he said after hearing him talk on there. He's just a strange dude.
Yeah, and sometimes that's just how college football is. It takes some strange dudes to wake up at 4:30 every morning and be like, okay, today and for the next 6 days of this week, I'm going to put 110% of my life into coaching football every day, where we try to figure out how we can advance a oval brown ball into the end zone with 11 dudes. Like, it takes a weird guy to commit their whole life to that. So you can give him a little slack, but he's definitely one of the weirder ones I've ever seen. And you look at guys with a lot of character like Mike Leach, who are pretty quirky and pretty bubbly as football coaches, but they know exactly what they're talking about. They're savants of the sport, and Pat Narduzzi may not be a savant, but I mean, he's been a great football coach for Pittsburgh over the past couple of years, despite how much of a goober he may be. Um, there are weird coaches out there. I think he's definitely one of them. All right. Moving on to our newest segment that we introduced last week. One of my new favorites, the Optical Assault Game of the Week, which is not currently sponsored by LASIK Plus. We have, for this week, drum roll, silent drum roll, Oklahoma State versus Kansas State. Final score 14-6. Let's pull up the drive chart. This one was truly disgusting. Uh, I really don't know how on earth we're getting close to last week's game, but this was pretty close. I don't think it tops last week, but this was pretty bad. Oklahoma State has one win currently on the season. Pretty sure that was against UT Martin.
Yeah, that's
FCS
crazy.
UT Martin. Kansas State, on the other hand, almost lost to North Dakota earlier this season. So, two teams that have a proven track record this year of some pretty horrible football. So, let's start off with the drive chart. Oklahoma State starts with the ball first, 3-and-out, punt. Kansas State gets the ball, 3-and-out, punt. Oklahoma State rips off a field goal, 8 play, 39 yards, 4-minute drive. Kansas State, 4 plays, punt. Oklahoma State, 3-and-out, punt. Kansas State, 3-and-out, punt. That was just the first quarter.
Yikes.
That first quarter must have been a million years long. Try to speed this up. Second quarter starts off with a field goal. So Oklahoma State takes a 6-0 lead. 1-10, Oklahoma State. Kansas State, 7 plays, punt. Oklahoma State, 4 plays, interception. Kansas State with a touchdown to take a 7-6 lead. Unfortunately, Avery Johnson completed a pass to Jace Brown for 34 yards. So an explosive play. So at least we got one explosive play. Oklahoma State missed field goal. Kansas State missed field goal. End of half. 7-6 at the half. So a death score to enter into the third quarter with. Kansas State starts off with an interception. Oklahoma State fumble. Kansas State punt. Oklahoma State fumble. So you get 3 turnovers and a punt in the third quarter. Still 7-6. Disgusting. Fourth quarter, 10 play, 70-yard touchdown drive by Kansas State to take a 14-6 lead, capped off by a 15-yard touchdown run by this is Joe Jackson, sub running back that took over for Dylan Edwards at the end of the season. So he comes in and gets a key touchdown run for Kansas State to take the lead there. I have to cut this because it just kicked me off the play-by-play. Hate ESPN. Maybe we can just take this as a plug for why I hate ESPN, but their drive chart's a lot easier to read. Okay, so Joe Jackson's touchdown run takes it to 14-6, followed by an interception from Oklahoma State, punt from Kansas State, turnover on downs is the final drive from Oklahoma State, 11 plays, 52 yards. Got them all the way down to the Kansas State 26 with a 4th and 17, incomplete pass. Kansas State kneels it out. End of game. Quick look at team overall stats in this game. 4 for 15 on third down, Kansas State was. 5 for 12 was Oklahoma State on third down. Total yards, Kansas State actually got outgained 373 to 284 by Oklahoma State, a team that is 1-10. Absolutely abysmal. Both teams broke the 100-yard rushing mark, so not too bad. think what stands out the most is the 5 turnovers by Oklahoma State. So that might lose you the football game if you only want to score 6 points. So at the end of the day, I think both of these teams are not very good. And this will probably go down as one of the worst games of the season. This drive chart was abysmal. I don't even know that weather was a factor in this game. So truly one of the biggest eyesores and a real optical assault on my eyes this week was Kansas State and Oklahoma State. All right, it's time for our Week 13 preview. We're going to go ahead and get into our first game. Hawaii taking on UNLV in Las Vegas. I've got the final score of this one being 38-28. I like Anthony Calandria against Michael Alejado and the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. I think that the passing attack from UNLV is just slightly better than what Hawaii brings to the table. I think UNLV actually can run the ball. Hawaii hasn't been so great running the ball this year. It's not going to be a battle of defenses, to say the least. Both these teams are 7+ wins in the win column right now, so they're doing pretty solid right now. But I really don't like either team's defensive game plan throughout this season. They've been giving up a ton of yards and a ton of points. Hawaii might be slightly better on that front, but I feel a lot better about UNLV being able to move the ball on the ground and through the air in this one. They probably won't have a problem putting up points. I bet that Hawaii will have a tough time moving the ball on the ground in this one, and that'll probably make a difference for them. Leaning solely on the pass may actually help UNLV play some defense because the only decent part of their defense is their secondary.
Yeah, I like UNLV as well. I feel like defense is going to be mainly absent. I feel like both teams are going to pretty much do whatever they want to. And I like UNLV 42-38 to come on top, shootout.
Yeah, I took a little bit lower of a score than I was thinking I should on this one. I feel like this one could get ridiculous with the points. I mean, I would take the over for sure, but there's always a chance that both teams just don't play up to their standard on offense. That could happen, but I think both teams will play well on offense and we'll see a lot of points.
Hold on, one more thing on this. I'm going to actually see what the over under is because I bet it's really high.
This probably would be one of the highest over-unders of the game.
64 and a half.
I figured this would be one of the highest over-unders of the season. It's definitely got to be up there. I mean, considering how many points a game UNLV has allowed this season, still being 8-2, that just says that all of their games probably hit the over.
Yeah, I mean, that's just absurd. They actually didn't. Their game last week wasn't a crazy shootout or nothing. They beat Utah State 29-26 in double overtime. So that's the first game that they have a top 30 in the whole season. That's crazy.
Wow, unbelievable. Well, I picked them to make the playoffs in the preseason. They haven't been horrible, but they've been a disappointment. So
They had a defense, they'd be right there.
yeah, they are the second best Rebels in the country. That's for sure. So I'm looking forward to this game. I actually probably will tune in for it. I think it's probably going to be one of those late night games with a lot of points.
It's Friday night, so stand alone.
Those are always fun. I'll probably tune in for that. Our next game, SMU at Louisville. I've got SMU taking this one 29-24. I feel like Kevin Jennings is clearly the better quarterback here. He's one of the top leading passers in the country. Struggled with a little bit of interception issue this season, just like last year, but I think he's been playing better football despite the fact that his team around him may not be as good as last year.
Yeah, I mean they lost a lot on defense from a season ago, and that's the big thing in this game too is how their secondary performs. I know Miller Moss hasn't been great, but they have some weapons. I think they'll exploit that enough to stay in this game, but SMU being at home really need this one to stay in the ACC race. Louisville's already played their way out of that, so I like SMU 27-24 to defend the home turf.
Yeah, I think that the profile that stands out to me is inconsistency of Miller Moss against defenses that put a lot of pressure on him. SMU is not a great defense, but they do put a lot of pressure on the quarterback and
That's
they create
true.
turnovers. So I think that this game profiles as one of those ones where Miller Moss may have a lot of big plays. Chris Bell's a solid receiver. They'll find some plays there, and their running backs have been getting some serious yards. Like the last game I watched, even though they lost, I think they were getting like 10 yards a carry with one of their backs before he got hurt. So they've got some studs in the backfield. Even though they've had a lot of injuries there, they're running the ball well. So there's a recipe for Louisville to win this ball game, but I feel like SMU's just got so much more firepower, and they can lean on that pass rush maybe to create some interceptions and get some big plays on defense in this game. I think that's the difference. SMU on top by 5 points for me. Missouri takes on Oklahoma in Norman. I've got the final score being a little bit more low scoring than probably most people do. I have Oklahoma winning this game 20-13, just based off of the feeling that neither of these teams are going to be airing out the ball. I think whoever shows up with the best defense in this game wins. It's that simple. Oklahoma has a tall task in stopping Ahmad Hardy, who's probably one of the best running backs, if not the best, in the whole country right now. Coming off of a hot performance of 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against your own Mississippi State Bulldogs, Landon, Ahmad Hardy is virtually unstoppable if they can get that play action pass game going. So if Matt Zollers plays good football, Oklahoma may be in for some serious trouble in this game, but I just don't see that happening.
I think they're still just too one dimensional to go on the road and beat a team with a defense like Oklahoma. So I like Oklahoma 24-14 here.
Yeah, I really do like the receivers that Missouri's got. Kevin Coleman is a really solid player, and I wanted the best for him after seeing him transfer, but this offense is just not giving him the output that he deserves with the kind of player that he is. I think looking back on it, he probably would have picked a different school to transfer to, at least if he wanted a better
Should
production
have
on the
stayed at
season.
state.
I think he would have cooked at State. I think if he had gone somewhere like Alabama or Ole Miss, he would have cooked too. But regardless, all of those teams have good receivers, so he could have gotten buried on the depth chart at one of those teams. He really stands out at Missouri as probably one of their best receivers. Overall, though, this game actually, both these teams are pretty similar to me, except offensively they're slightly different. They each have a key player on offense that can move the ball with their legs. John Mateer is probably the best runner on Oklahoma's football team, and he's the quarterback. And then you look at Missouri, and Ahmad Hardy is pretty much the whole offense right now. So those two players had the biggest impact on scoring in this game. I'm probably taking Oklahoma and John Mateer to find some passing touchdowns and explosives on a somewhat susceptible Missouri secondary, but Missouri's defensive line can get after you too, and we saw what
They
Ole Miss
can.
was able to do against Oklahoma at Oklahoma. They got pressure with a average defensive line, so I'm sure Drink is looking at that as the kind of coach that he is, and he's going to want to take advantage of that schematically against them. So if they want any chance in this game, they're going to have to wreak havoc on John Mateer and make sure that his line is held back there in the backfield. Still like Oklahoma, though. That defense is just so good. I think that they find a way to slow down Ahmad Hardy. Looking at the blueprint that Alabama laid out for them in that game when they played Missouri, I think they'll probably find something that is pretty similar to that in their own right and probably bottle him up in this game. USC takes on Oregon in Eugene. I have Oregon with a final score of 35-31. I think it's going to be a great game. I don't remember the last time that Oregon and USC played that was really memorable to me. This is shaping up to be probably the biggest Oregon USC game in a while. Both teams have playoff aspirations. USC is kind of hanging in the balance. They have to win this game to stay in it. Oregon loses this game. Not only do they have USC vault above them, but they don't really have that many big games left on the schedule. This is kind of it for them. So,
They have a road trip to Washington, but Washington has really fallen off since that Wisconsin game and
yeah,
lost any respect they had.
unless chaos ensues, I think Oregon also kind of has to win this game to make the playoffs. I mean, considering how their schedule lays out, this game and the Penn State game and the Indiana game were the biggest games on their schedule. So, I think they have to win this one. So, I mean, they had the Iowa game recently, which they won very closely. That was a big game, but I feel like this game's a bigger game. Having this at home, you've got to win. It's a no brainer win. You got to be able to pull this out. Both teams present elite quarterback play, elite wide receivers. Makai Lemon is, in my opinion, probably the best receiver in college football right now. He just put up an insane performance against Iowa last week. Not many players have those kinds of outputs against Iowa, but he did. In a come from behind fashion, they won that football game. So both these teams coming off of a fresh win against Iowa, playing some tough football, having to win in a way that they're not used to winning in. I think this game's going to be really close. I think these teams are both as sharp as they're going to be all season. Hopefully, they'll be both healthy. I think Kenyon Sadiq's been battling some injuries. The Corey Moore has been battling injuries for Oregon. Like to see them come back in this game and make a huge impact. Dante Moore needs a huge bounce back game. He's got all the talent and all the tangibles. I expect him to play well against an average to below average USC defense per Lincoln Riley football teams. I don't expect them to be very clutch here. I think Oregon wins this one close.
I want to pick USC so bad, but I just can't. It's really tough to pick against Oregon at home. I know they did lose to Indiana at home this year, but losing two home games in the same year, a team like that, I just don't feel like that's going to be something that happens. But I do think it'll be close. So I got Oregon 28-24 eking this one out.
Yeah, I really like this game. I think this is the most intriguing game to me on the whole slate for this week. I'm really looking forward to that one. Next, we have Pitt taking on Georgia Tech in Atlanta. I have Georgia Tech with a final score of 31-24, taking a one-score win against Pitt. After watching Pitt play against Notre Dame, I don't know if what Pat Narduzzi was saying was real or not, but if conference games are that much more important, then they should show up for this one because this one matters a lot. They can beat Georgia Tech right here, get a statement ranked win, and take their spot in the conference championship if they can finish out the season with a win against Miami. I don't like their odds, to be honest with you. I don't think they win either of those games. You feel pretty good about them having a chance in the Miami game. I think it's possible. At best, I think they split, but I feel like Georgia Tech's offense is going to be too much for them. I don't think they're able to keep up. Mason's going to have his best game of the entire season. Probably throw for over 400 if they want to beat Georgia Tech. Because Georgia Tech is leading the nation in yards per game right now, and they're scoring a ton of points. So defense doesn't even really have to be a factor if you can do what they're doing on offense.
Yeah, I like Georgia Tech too. They've played really well at home this year, and I don't think Pitt's that great of a team. I know they had the 5 game win streak, or was it six?
It was somewhere around that.
5 or 6, doesn't matter. But they really didn't play anybody great during that stretch. I do still think they beat Miami though, just because I just think Miami's due to choke another game, and that was at home last week of the year. Weird game, but I'll talk about that more when we actually pick that. But I like Georgia Tech at home here, 38-28 to beat a Pitt team that was a little inflated coming into this weekend last week.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I'm not loving that team as a whole right now. I think they've got too many issues as far as running the ball and defensively. They're just not really putting it all together right now. They're pretty one dimensional. So I'd happily take Georgia Tech and Haynes King in this one. They have a huge win, vault them into their final game taking on Georgia in Atlanta again. So that's a huge game. If Georgia Tech somehow wins that, we're going to be having a crazy conversation going into conference championship week. It's a rivalry game. No telling what could happen. Like last year, we could have an insane game, but I think Georgia Tech probably will drop that game and end up being 10-2 heading into conference championship week. Next, we've got Tennessee taking on Florida in the swamp in a classic rivalry game. I think if you had told me in the preseason that when we got to this game that Tennessee would have been relevant at one point, only to end up choking a couple of really close games, and Florida was never going to be relevant, and they would be in the pits the whole season and fire Billy Napier. I would have been pretty surprised that that's where this game would be this late in the season. Florida entering this game with a 3-7 record. It's hard to believe that's where we're at right now with this Florida team. We were talking about Arkansas earlier. We couldn't believe Arkansas was 2-8. I really do think that both these teams have some serious flaws that make it hard for them to win in really, really competitive games. But overall, as far as talent's concerned, they're significantly more talented than teams in the bottom or in the really even just the bottom third of most of these other conferences. Florida and Arkansas and Auburn are all just talented enough to beat probably middle of the pack teams in almost all of the other conferences. And there's plenty of arguments to be made there. You can get into as much of them as you want, but that's my personal opinion. With where we're at with this game, I have a hard time picking Florida to win this one. They show up really randomly to play competitive football in games that honestly they have no business being competitive in. Tennessee should run away with this game by several touchdowns. But since it's at Florida, it's a rivalry. I'm only going to take Tennessee to win this one 37-28. So that's a 9 point win. It's technically two possessions. I'm not entirely confident in that, to be honest with you. I see a scenario where Tennessee does probably win by more than two scores, but I just don't feel comfortable with that. I think Tennessee's probably going to play this game pretty tight there till the end and then secure a win.
Every fiber of my being wants to pick Florida in this game. That's really how I feel, but I just can't do it. I can't do it. They have had a few close games here recently against Ole Miss and Georgia, and it feels like they're due to break through and snatch another one. Kind of like they did against Texas. But I can't pick it. It would not surprise me the least bit at all if they pull it off. But I'm going to take Tennessee to hold on and win this one, 31-28.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the strength of record of Tennessee right now, and genuinely can't think of any really, really big wins for them. The overtime win in Starkville matters because that was an away game. They were able to pull out a huge win that kept their season virtually alive at the moment. Being able to be in that situation in Gainesville, I'd like Tennessee in a close one if it came down to it. But like you said, it feels like Florida probably should be due for a win. I'd favor them a lot more likely against Florida State in a rivalry game to end the season than this one.
You know if they get to host that or not?
I do not. I genuinely don't think it matters because I doubt there will be many fans at that game.
I think they
Regardless,
win.
I think Florida. Okay, it depends on which version of Florida shows up because a lot of people only remember the one that showed up against Kentucky.
I think their best show up against Florida State. Surely.
I think that we'll get a good version of Florida in one of these last two games because if Ole Miss and Georgia have to get the best version of Florida, then I think that Florida State should too. So and Tennessee, we'll see. I think this team's got the athletes that if they can find a competitive streak in one of these last two games, can get a win. But they're out of the bowl conversation and they're at this point just playing for pride and NIL money down the road. So got Florida taking another loss here to fall to 3-8. Finally, we've got BYU at Cincinnati for a Big 12 clash and a Big 12 title elimination game. BYU is probably in the driver's seat right now to be the second team in behind Texas Tech. If they lose this one, don't know what the tiebreaker scenarios are and who would be next up. I think probably Utah, but Cincinnati technically I think still has a path. But I think a lot of chaos would have to happen. Um, Regardless, I'm taking BYU in this one. I have them winning 45-28. As much as I want Cincinnati to really be competitive and even win this game, which I was earlier in the season when we were talking about Cincinnati and maybe BYU being a fraud, I thought Cincinnati could win this game. Don't like what I saw from them last week against Arizona and then how they played against Utah. I don't have any faith that they can play the kind of ball that BYU is going to play. I mean, that ground and pound complementary football, it absolutely terrorized TCU last week. I genuinely don't think that Cincinnati's that much better than TCU. So, as far as physicality standpoint, I don't think they are either. I think BYU is able to do what they want to do on offense. Maybe Cincinnati's able to find something later in this game to make it look a little closer, but I think BYU might dominate this game.
I think Cincinnati's going to turn in a much better performance than last week against Arizona. But I don't think it's going to be enough against BYU. BYU is great at winning these close games with a low margin for error. So I feel like they're going to go on the road, get a big one here to get to 10-1, 28-27 though.
That's pretty tight. Yeah, I mainly picked a blowout just because of what we've been seeing from Cincinnati and the way they've been trending and how I saw BYU respond against TCU. I thought that they could drop that game. TCU's not a bad football team, but they responded, man. They put a spanking on TCU.
They've been kind of spiraling though. They were 6-1, now they're 6-4.
Yeah, and I think that they got to the meat of their schedule, and that's really what's starting to show. I still think they're decent, but I just think that BYU's got so much more talent and they're so much more well coached right now than a majority of these Big 12 teams. They're dominating teams that they're better than. Arizona might be the only game that was questionable, and Arizona is currently 7-3, who just had a ranked win against Cincinnati. So you look at common opponents, they both played pretty similar games against Arizona, except BYU actually won. So, if anything, if you want to use the common opponent talking point, BYU's got an advantage there. I just overall, even if that wasn't in the conversation, I think that BYU's probably going to be the better football team all around in this one. Quarterback may be the only advantage I think Cincinnati's got in this one. All right, I think that's going to do it for this week of the Feel for the Game podcast. We will not be attending any games this week, considering what our options were. We just didn't want to travel for any of these games. They're kind of out of our price range and not really games that we could get excited about spending several $100s for. So we're going to chill out, watch a lot of football, start preparing for next week's podcast, and just enjoy relaxing for a little bit. Starting to get close to hunting season, so hopefully we can get some cooler weather coming in and find some time to get in the deer stand. That it would be best case scenario for me, but with Mississippi weather, you just never know what's going to happen. So we'll be back next week with episode 14, heading into rivalry week. We will be visiting the Egg Bowl on Friday of next week, so that will be our next stop. Very excited about that. I feel like this podcast has kind of culminated to the Egg Bowl, just considering how we started.
Or who we go for, yeah.
It's pretty exciting. Like we've said several times, neither of us have been to our team winning an Egg Bowl, and we'll both be there in
We're both
Starkville.
0-2.
Both 0-2.
Yeah.
So one of us is going to get to see our team finally win an Egg Bowl, and with the Egg Bowl, you just never know what's going to happen. So we're going to be looking at a pretty interesting game, and we'll be kind of tracking the whole Lane Kiffin drama heading into that, if that has a factor in what's going to happen there. So really excited about that, but that's going to do it for us this week.